Welcome to today's broadcast of the Essential Guide to Including Students with Disabilities in the Early School Years. I'm Nicole and I am your host today. I am here with Gayle Hernandez. Hello, Gayle. How are you?
I'm great, Nicole. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. For those of you that are joining in to watch, I have an online resource called the Inclusive Class that I post tips and strategies for including students with disabilities in the regular classroom. And I also have a Twitter account, Facebook account, very, very active online. So you just need to Google the Inclusive Class if you're looking for more resources and more webinars on inclusion. So without further ado, I wanted to get started with this presentation by having Gayle introduce herself and let you know a little bit about her background and what she does before she shares her expertise on including students with disabilities in the early school years. Gayle, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
I would be delighted to, Nicole. I've been teaching since 1993 in kindergarten settings and classrooms, and I'm been an active participant and presenter of professional development in my school district. I have facilitated a kindergarten network for about 10 years and completed my master's degree in early childhood education in 2007.
Good, thank you. So to kick off our presentation, I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page as to what inclusion actually is and what we would consider the definition of inclusion. So to give you a little bit of background, inclusion in the educational setting is generally known as inclusive education. Inclusive education is a philosophy that believes in the equal rights of all students to have a meaningful education. It asserts that all students with all abilities are welcome and included in classrooms with same-age peers and given the supports necessary to learn from the same curriculum. Now, inclusion, according to the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, has 4 defining elements that characterize it. And they are, first of all, inclusion is a process, so it's not a program. It doesn't happen in isolation. It doesn't happen in a classroom. It doesn't happen in a resource room or on the playground. It's an act, it's a belief, it's an attitude. Inclusion is concerned with the identification and removal of barriers. So people are constantly looking for ways to naturally include one another in school activities and outside of school. Inclusion is about the presence and participation as well as the achievement of all students. So inclusion is about meaningful, purposeful, enriching activities that all students can be part of. And finally, inclusion involves a particular emphasis on those groups of learners who may be at risk of marginalization, exclusion, or underachievement. So in schools, people are constantly watching to make sure that there are learners who may not be part of the mainstream, the typically developing child who is meeting all the requirements of his or her grade level. Inclusion is looking at those children who maybe fall outside of those parameters and doing what they can to bring those children in and include them in the classroom. So, and just to give you a little bit of research about inclusion, studies have shown that over the last 3 decades, inclusive education has been repeatedly proven to intellectually, socially, and emotionally benefit students with and without disabilities. Students with high incidence disabilities, meaning those disabilities that happen frequently, that you see more frequently in our population, A higher percentage of them make academic progress in general education classes compared to students in traditional resource settings. And results indicate that there are no differences across the three domains when comparing classrooms that include students with severe disabilities and classrooms without students with severe disabilities. So inclusion benefits all kids. And as the slide here says, did you know that there have been no studies conducted since the late 70s that have shown an academic advantage for students with intellectual and other developmental disabilities educated in their separate settings? And one more slide before I turn this over to Gayle. And basically, without inclusion, we are limiting every child's potential, not just the child who is not included, but we are limiting everyone's ability to grow as human beings. So how do we do that is the question. So I'm going to move this over to Gayle. And Gayle, can you give our listeners a brief overview of where you work now? You said that you've been a kindergarten teacher in inclusive schools for many, many years. Can you basically tell us or give us a setting as to what your school looks like, or a school, a typically inclusive school may look like, and what it's made up of before we begin? Because
absolutely, Nicole, I would love to.
Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
I would. No worries. Yeah, I teach in an urban area of, it's a suburb of Vancouver, British Columbia, so it's in Canada. And our school is, it's on the higher needs side, as there are needs all over the district, but ours is one of the more needy ones, but it'll give you a bit of an indication. We have 17 divisions and between 350 and 400 students. Our numbers fluctuate throughout the year. We have 45 designated students. 20 of those are children with autism. And we have over 30 languages spoken in the homes of our families. Our school has 19 classroom teachers. 2 of those are job shares. And we have a counselor 4 days a week, 3 resource teachers. I think one of them might be part-time. And let's see, and 2 ESL teachers, a music teacher, an itinerant Aboriginal support worker, itinerant speech and language pathologist, and a teacher librarian comes in for 4 days a week. Our school additionally staffs between 18 and 20 educational assistants. And in American language, I think that translates to paraprofessionals. Mm-hmm. Our class compositions are complex and they're diverse. And that's true in all of our schools in Burnaby. In most classrooms, there is at least 1 student with a designation. In some, there have been up to 4 or 5. Paraprofessionals are attached to schools and not to children. Designated and non-designated students are with complex profiles are grouped in classrooms depending on their needs. In our building, we share our whole school population. So all of the children are all of us. We see them in the hall, we say hello. We help support programming for children as we greet them, for nonverbal, for example. Children who are nonverbal and are working on language development will stop to say hello, those kinds of things. In each class, in addition to designated students, there have traditionally been approximately a third of my class, those who have English as a second language. Many of those children are level 1, which means they have no language. And I also have children with undesignated needs that are sometimes as high as the ones that are designated. As a result, my designated students are simply part of my class, and my practice is one of constant modification and adaptation for all my students, designated or not.
Great, thank you. That's quite a diverse school, and which is very typical of inclusive schools, because with an inclusive school, we don't segregate students with extra needs and place them outside of their community or neighborhood school, which unfortunately happens. in places that are not inclusive. So, Gayle, I wanted to know, how do you begin the process of educating students with disabilities who are in the community, who are just beginning school? Like, what would the school start out by doing to identify these students who have the extra needs? Can you give us an overview of how an inclusive school gets the education process going?
Absolutely, I would love to. And I love this process. I'm quite proud of my district and the work that it does in this area. It begins with a welcome to kindergarten event. So all new kindergarten registrants come to a welcoming event in May, and that entails a station rotation of play-based activities. So a story is delivered by the public librarian. A physical activity station is delivered by a community early childhood educator. A cut and color station is set up, a Play-Doh station, and a letter number match station. Parents come with their children, and that designated or not, they all come. Resource personnel are part of this event. Our counselor, our principal, our resource teachers, our ESL teachers, and our kindergarten teachers are all part of it. School staff rotate, we observe, we take notes, and afterwards we discuss the children that we've seen. This includes both designated and non-designated students. All children have needs that will need to be met. So we look at them as part of a group of children that we'll teach. This is an essential part of creating an inclusive classroom environment. Staff some of these children will come to us with a designation and some of them won't. So some of them have been pre-identified, some of them won't. Throughout the kindergarten year, one or two may become designated, and this is part of a teaching an inclusive childhood setting. Information sharing is critical for student success. School board support personnel collect names and designated students before our May event or June, and they gather in, and they do that prior to kindergarten whenever possible. Mm-hmm. And they request the files if they exist. So if there are medical files or occupational therapist files, physical therapist files, speech and language files, all those sorts of things. A school resource teacher will visit a preschool setting if there is one. Preschool setting, they may visit the home with the intent to see the children in a setting that has been supported before they come to school. Or information at this time about what supports will need to be in place before the child comes into school, so we can get the classroom ready for whatever those needs might be. And because we want a successful entry into the school system, we want to set our children up for success, so we try to be proactive instead of reactive. In September, an intake meeting takes place with the classroom and resource teacher, who are the case managers for the student, as well as the parents, and if possible, other staff that will be working with the child. Communication about what needs to be set up for the child in classrooms takes place at this meeting ahead of time.
So Gayle, Gayle, I'm just showing a slide here called the Dream Tree. Do you want to explain to our audience what that picture is? Because that's very important to that process of welcoming students into the school.
I love my dream tree. Yeah, those little round, little oval shaped things there we give one of those to each of our families when they come in September, and the parents will write down a dream that they have for their child for the kindergarten year and for the class, and it gets displayed. And this is one way that we show inclusion, because you know what? I'll bet you can't tell which one of those children has a special need.
Love it. And then this slide here that I'm showing right now, this is some of the work that you had the students do during the group activity. Is that correct?
Well, that was during the first week when we do a gradual entry, so they come for a couple hours first, and the first day, and then we build up to their full days. So yeah, so that's just an activity, and it's a bit of an assessment.
Yeah.
Children, I think, yeah, one of those children is designated, and it's not one of the ones that you expect to see. That's yeah. So all of the children participate. The cutting is done by the children, and the coloring is all done by the children. So yeah.
Great, thank you. So Gayle, now once you have your school, or sorry, your classroom set up, and you've identified those kids with extra needs, how do you translate that into your classroom? So now you've got your group of kiddos that are coming to class. What do you do to support the education of the students in your classroom?
Well, I would be delighted to share that. Yeah, well, to begin, I do assessments. So I assess the needs of all of my children in my class. And all of my children have needs, right? So some just come with different needs than other ones. And once I have a sense of what the children are placed in my care need, I begin planning then how I'm going to teach them. And every year is different. I'm always looking for new strategies to use. I prepare a preview at the beginning of each year that outlines the skills and competencies that we are working toward. And all children work toward those same goals. So the bar is the same for all the children, because we want to meet curricular goals, of course, right? And when I know what the children in when I have a sense of what the children in my class need, then I look for strategies and supports that might work to support them. Then I try them. If they work, great, awesome. And if they don't, we go back to the drawing board and look for some new strategies. My students with special needs will be often on a modified program, designed collaboratively by the school-based team, which is my support teachers, the SLPs, speech and language pathologists, etc., the education assistant, the parents and the teacher, and with that information, we develop and put together an IEP, which is an individualized education plan. When writing the IEP, I always have the curriculum goals in my mind. Wherever possible, if the child is capable of reaching their curricular goals, then of course we do that. And when we need to, we modify the programming so that they can be successful, because that's what we want, of course. Some children are on a completely modified program, and in that case, I look at my program and assess what that child can do, and then I keep them in the classroom with their peers as much as I possibly can. So, for example, most children could be present and successful on at least some level during music. We have a specialized music teacher in our building, and they can all sing, they can all dance, they can all move. We have explorations time, which is center time, right? Recess, lunch, buddy time. We have buddy class time. I love buddies. An older class of students will come weekly into my classroom, and they work together looking at books, that kind of thing. And my children with extra needs, of course, can be part of that as well. Also, they can be part of physical education. Most also learn to join their classmates also during carpet activities. So they can sit on the carpet for build up to 3 to 5 minutes, even if that's the goal, or longer. Yeah, and some can be part of the carpet activities for the whole time.
And sorry to interrupt, Gayle, but when you say carpet activities, there's instruction happening during that time, right? Like story.
So it might be calendar. It might be a story. It might be some games or songs. It might be an introduction to a writing activity and a math lesson. Mm-hmm. All of those things.
So they're participating across the curriculum.
They are, of course.
Thanks. And what about report card time? What happens then?
Oh, I'm not gonna. Let me just tell you. They also come. They're also part. They're not just part of the carpet activities. They're also part of assemblies.
Oh, yes.
So when the school comes together, they come and participate in that. And also field trips. They come with us on all our field trips. And we also, things like the Terry Fox Run, they participate in that. So whenever possible, they're part of the school-wide. And then at report card time, our reports go out 3 times a year. And we report on areas of growth, areas of strength, and areas for further development for all of our children. I indicate if a child is approaching, meeting, or exceeding expectations. If a child is not meeting expectations, plan to move that child closer to meeting. It's a cycle that never ends, and it's the goalpost of curriculum goals that are always present. So we're always working toward meeting the curricular goals. My programming is open-ended, it's play-based, it's inquiry-based. For example, those photos are awesome. Those are a grade 2-3 classroom. The top right, up the top right there, that's a grade 2-3-4. 2 teachers work together and teach together. Grade 2-3-4, and the kids work in the hallway. All the children do. So, and sometimes a child with extra needs will work outside in the hallway, but they don't stand out because all of our children, right?
Right.
And then on the bottom right, that's inside of our resource room. It's a quiet room there. Yeah.
Great. Sorry to.
No, I just had to talk about that picture. Okay. Yeah,
I think I may have.
Okay, so let's see. So, okay, programming, open-ended story workshop. Oh, there you go. I use story workshop. So objects are placed out, and my students build stories, orally tell them or write them, depending on their skill level, and then we publish. For my ESL, learning disabled and designated student, this allows them to work alongside their peers. Everyone gets to be included during writing time, and so that all of them can be successful. So they're actually manipulating objects. My math program is not worksheet based. It uses manipulative materials as well. I teach a lesson. I send students for practice. And as they manipulate, I circulate. And I support learning at individual student level student level. So whatever the needs are, I'll go around and say, well, what about this? Or always like, can you count them for me? Or, can you build me an A-B pattern or for one child? Or can you build me an A-B-C pattern, depending on where they are, because I'm extending learning. I think Vygotsky refers to that as scaffolding. They're learning. I assess as I go. I might use pencil and paper occasionally, but it's usually for assessment purposes. When I taught a kindergarten grade 1 class, my grade 1's got a lesson. We're sometimes given paper and pencil, but usually not until after they'd had some time with manipulative materials. And this is great for children with extra needs because they too can manipulate materials on some level, right? And if their goals are completely modified, then my education assistant or paraprofessional might work beside them on one of their goals, but they're not removed from the setting. So they're still in the classroom with the children, working on their goals at their level.
Right.
So they're not separated out.
Right.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So the manipulatives allow each child to be part of the class and work at their own level. For my designated, let's see. If the concept being taught, IEP goals, whenever possible, they work alongside their peers. Support personnel are critical, and we function as a team. If I get stuck and I need some help, and believe me, even after 22 years in the classroom, I still get stuck. And I need some help. It's not an easy job, and it's not a quick fix, and it's not something, sometimes I come home and I cry still, right? Like every once in a while, it's I ask my other teachers for what do they do or what do they suggest or what might work for them. And my resource team is also awesome. If I've got a concerned about a child, I take them to the school-based team. That includes the resource teacher and the ESL teacher, the principal, and if a child has a speech and language pathologist working with them, they might, if they're available, they're only in about once a week. So whenever possible, they're part of it if they can be. They get invited as well as everyone else. Education assistants or paraprofessionals often work one-on-one with students with designations. Sometimes they are shared between 2 or 3 students in a classroom, support the children on their caseload, and they're my biggest support in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
That knowledge is much more specialized. Their knowledge is way more specialized than mine is, and I ask for their input all the time. So they're like a team teacher, but I'm still the case manager. I'm ultimately responsible for the programming that happens for my child. Whenever possible, the paraprofessionals work in my classroom, but sometimes they'll work in other parts of the school, or a quiet part of the classroom.
Like the ones on the slide.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. That's right. This is dependent on the needs of the child in question, though. The paraprofessional direction comes from the resource teacher, the classroom teacher, and any other professionals with specialized expertise, like the occupational therapist, physical therapist, speech and language pathologist, etc. The paraprofessional's not the case manager. We are.
That's right. And I think that's a real defining feature of inclusive schools, in that the classroom teacher really is the one who is overseeing the education of the student. It is not the special education teacher's responsibility to make sure that the child is being included in the classroom. They provide support and advice and suggestions and help plan, but it really is the teacher's responsibility to educate all the students in the class, including the students who have extra needs, correct?
Absolutely. And you know, Nicole, I think I want to say this for the listeners. If I'd never done inclusive education and somebody said to me, it is your responsibility, I'd be freaked out.
Yeah.
Right? Because that sounds really big and really daunting, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. It's actually part of. It's a philosophy, Nicole. It's not. It's a way of looking at children, and if I look at all of my children as my responsibility, it's no different.
Right.
Having a child with extra needs, and I don't have all the answers. I still don't after 22 years.
Right.
It's a work in progress, so it is, and like I say, these children, right? So I talk to my principal who supports sometimes. I talk to my resource teachers. So, and we share the responsibility, me and the resource teacher. So it's not like, it's like, woo, Gayle, today you get to have all the responsibility. No, it's a shared thing, right? But ultimately, yeah, I am the case manager.
Right.
Alongside we share the management of the children together with the resource teacher. Yeah.
Gayle, do you want to talk a bit about the materials that you use to facilitate the learning in your classroom?
Absolutely, I can. Okay, those right there, you see a chair. That chair moves around, and for children, and that's for in a child in a grade. How old is he now? About grade 4. That's his chair, and it moves with him around the school and around the classroom. That's a child with mobility issues, right?
Right.
And the one on the right, that's a chime for it's a chime that we use to help develop self-regulation.
Right.
It's just a calming thing. We spend a few minutes calming, and the whole class works. Yeah,
the whole class participates.
Yeah.
So, and can you tell us a bit about the manipulatives and what you do with the visuals?
I sure will. Absolutely. The materials I use in my classroom are open-ended and manipulative based, whenever possible. to provide the opportunity for all students to work at their skill level so that scaffolding and learning of that can take place. Visuals are important as well. Well, those pictures up there, those are my math house on the top. And they move around, kids go get them and move them when they need to. And then that's a moving cart. And children or teachers can take those out, move the whole cart into the classroom. It's just a movable. And you know, a lot of our education assistants will go and pull from trolleys like that. So if you had a child with extra needs, you could have, and they were shared things, then the education assistant could go and get the tub they need and then take it to the classroom and then bring it back, and another person could get that. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, visuals are, I'm going to go back to what I do now. Visuals are important as well. Visual learners exist in all of my classrooms, in every classroom. And my materials are chosen sometimes to meet a specific child's needs. So for example, a child development will be given materials to exercise the fingers. A child who is sensitive to loud noise may be given a set of headphones to use in loud environments. So for example, when we go in for assemblies, that'll help them, or in the gym when it's loud. Let's see, a child with ADD may need some squish toys. A beanbag chair may be provided in a quiet area of the room for a break if needed. Let's see, all children benefit from a visual schedule that outlines the day. Well, there's the beanbag. And many children benefit from social stories or PEC. So on the left there, you see our washroom. That's a washroom that has wheelchair accessibility. And the kids turn that little green sign around when it's in use, and they become independent with that, right? So now visual schedules. All children benefit from a visual schedule. That there's one right there that outlines the activities for the day. Many children benefit from social stories or PECs, not just those kids with designations. These are provided whenever needed. I have social stories, and right now particularly I'm using them because we're setting up kindergarten. It helps all of that. Yeah, did you want to say something?
No, I was agreeing with you in that a lot of these materials and schedules and various, elements of a lesson are beneficial to all the kids, not just
absolutely
the children who are designated with extra needs.
Completely. Yeah. So now schedules. I build my classroom schedule with a mix of listening, active output time. It's like manipulatives or explorations work, social time, which is huge, and physical activity breaks. A variety of different kinds of activities are necessary for optimal learning. For example, some teacher-directed time, some student-directed time, some quiet individual work time, some social time, and practice or manipulative time. Sorry, I just said that. When integrating children with special needs, I look at my class schedule and decide how that particular child will best fit with the flow of the day. So what can they do best? So because we start, it's not a deficit model. We start from strengths. What do they do best? How do they shine, right? Which activities will provide the best opportunity for the child to become a successful part of our classroom? How can I connect them with their peers? Not just like, it's not a make work project thing, right? Yeah. And then I work with a team to make inclusion possible. If a child with extra or special needs has specific goals different from that of his or her classmates, I make sure their pullout time happens during a block of time they would be least successful working with their peers. So whenever possible, they're in the classroom alongside. Yeah. Physical space is key.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the physical space. And just before you get started, this is your classroom.
That is.
Yeah.
That's my room. I like my room. I'd like you to notice it's open, right? Yeah, and there's, lots, and those kids, it is designed with ease of movement, right, for all the children. There's open spaces for children to work on the floor as well as at tables. And notice that there are little carpets everywhere. That's so they can just grab a tub. So I'm using all the spaces in my room. Tables are placed in groups on purpose or pods instead of rows. I want to develop a learning community, and the children need opportunities to work together to build their social skills. Also, we learn from each other because together is better. All learning materials have a place. Materials are in one area, they're to the far right there. Blocks are in another, over to the left. Writing materials are in another. Literacy in another. That makes it easier for all the children to access the room. There's always a carpet area for class meetings and story time, calendar, that sort of thing. We sometimes face the teacher and sometimes we meet in a circle. I keep one of the banks of lights off to soften the lighting, and I've added some lamps in my room. This helps keep the children calm. I choose natural materials and earth tones for display boards. This helps. I have Christmas lights up. We use those when we want to have quiet downtime. There's evidence of children's work up on the wall. Rather than an abundance of commercial posters. This makes them feel like they're important. I add photos of their children and their families in frames. This helps with comfort and helps build community. And children with extra needs are included in this, the same as everyone else.
Okay, I forgot you used lamps to soften the lighting, and I wish we had a picture of that, because I remember that even years ago when we were teaching across the hall from one another, is that you really used the environment to facilitate.
It's called the third teacher, actually. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I want to point out, though, Nicole, if you look at these pictures of these classrooms, I'm wondering, do they look much different than a non-inclusive classroom?
Right.
Is there much of a difference? I guess, like, how much of an adaptation would it be for people to make that bridge?
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
I just wanted. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So, can we talk about curriculum?
Yes. So, in addition to the academic curriculum and the physical space and the materials, there's also a hidden curriculum, which is the social curriculum in our schools.
It's huge.
And it's huge. It is actually one of the most important elements, a foundation to inclusive classrooms. So
it is, yeah, absolutely. It's critical because Nicole, when children feel like they belong, then they can learn.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
If children don't have the social skills that they need, then we can't learn together, right? They need to learn to self-regulate. If you look up Shanker, he's huge in this, and he has done a lot of research on that.
Stuart Shanker.
Stuart Shanker, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's huge. Programs like Minds Up, that Chime is part of the Minds Up program. Restitution, cooperative learning, tribes, the WITS program, focus on bullying, 7 Habits of Successful Kids, and kids and teens. All these kinds of programs meet our curriculum goals. These little things that you're showing right now, Nicole, are in classrooms from kindergarten to grade 7. So those are, and I went into all of the classrooms and took some photos, right? So it's not just kindergarten here. You're not just seeing kindergarten. You're
seeing it across the board.
Exactly. And I did that on purpose because I don't want anybody to think, oh, you know what, Gayle, you teach in kindergarten. I can't do that. We can all do this, Nicole. Right. Yeah. So children with extra needs are included in this curriculum really well, this social curriculum. These programs break down the social skills and teach them directly in small, manageable chunks, which means that all children can benefit. Additionally, having children with extra needs in my classroom helps the rest of the class develop empathy, which is critical. These special needs children become then an important part of our social group, and any fears or misunderstandings about who they are as people are often dispelled.
Yeah.
Just because they're in there and you can understand them, and they become human beings. They don't become these separate little, whoa, who is that? screaming, yelling person, right?
Right.
And we explain to the group, okay, when it's like, sometimes kids get scared when they hear when they see this, or they hear the sounds of the nonverbal children. It's like, well, they haven't got the same language. They talk using those pictures, and and they haven't got the same voice. So imagine how frustrating that would be. So when they're making that noise, they're just telling you that that they're hurt, or they're upset, or whatever, because they don't have, and then they go, oh, okay. And kids are awesome. They go, oh, okay, whatever, and then they just part of the
it's just another form of communication. We don't all speak the same language.
Yeah.
Right.
And recess lunchtime, the children are outside with the rest of the school. Education assistants, teachers, and playground supervisors know who they are and support them collectively. And these kids are included in every aspect of our school and our community. And segregation just doesn't exist. And now I'm looking at the time, Nicole.
You're doing great.
Okay, volunteers.
Yeah, let's talk about maybe what do the parents do in your classroom? I mean, one of the things that I noticed years ago when we were teaching together is that parents have a big role in your classroom. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what the parents do in your classroom?
Absolutely, I would love to. For me, the parents are the child's first teacher, and they have knowledge about their children that I need to know. So I see parents as experts on their child, and I need to work with them as a team. And I can't leave them out. Communication with parents is critical, and I do everything I can to keep those lines open. They are part of the pack. They do the same things in the school as all the other parents do, right? And there's communication is. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like, if that's okay.
Yeah, I didn't put up any visuals, which I'm wishing I had done now, but go ahead, please.
No, that's fine. It's all good. At the IEP meetings, individual education plan, I think you've got those down there as well. We share information, and parents help build the goals based on what they know works at home, or with workers that support their child out of the school. So we look at their successes and build that in. Communication books between home and school are often used. These are usually completed by the paraprofessional. Report cards go home 3 times a year for children with extra needs in a modified format. So our district has one of those. Yeah. Quick conversations happen at the door, often with all my parents. Children with extra needs, no different, because they're part of my class. And I also keep myself available for meeting times, and in person, or talk on the phone if questions come up. Volunteers are welcome in my classroom. All parents come, and this includes parents with extra needs. I send a calendar home monthly, and parents can come into my classroom to volunteer. Actually, Nicole, I've got copies of those on another website that I have that I didn't give to you.
Okay.
So for teachers, maybe we can put up a link to that later.
Perfect.
Because there's a whole bunch of supports and letters I use of my volunteer program and all those sorts of things. So those are easily accessible on a different website. I've got 2.
Do you remember the name of it? Or, well, of course you would know the name of it, but
growing Kinder, KINDER, Garden, GARDEN.
Perfect.
Growing, yeah.
.com?
Exactly. I don't remember, honestly. I always have to copy and paste that.
We'll post the link.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. Okay. So here's how parents participate. They join us for 15 minutes of reading at the beginning of the day. At drop-off time, they help me run bingo games, that sort of thing, in small groups during output time. They help me prepare classroom materials. They help me run cooking activities sometimes in small groups. So they'll come in, the kids will be working on something. And often it's things like making ants on a log, or those sorts of things. Supervising on days to come and help supervise field trips. They run science experiments with small groups, simple ones, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wow, Gayle, I mean, I would just, if I was a beginning teacher, even a teacher that was new to inclusion, the information that you've given during the past 50 minutes has just been incredible. And most of its focus has been on students in the early school years, such as kindergarten, K1. Now, does this, and we sort of touched on it earlier with some visuals that indicating that inclusion extends beyond kindergarten and grade 1, because often we think, well, it's easy to include in the early years, but what about when they're in the middle school years or even the high school years? How does inclusion extend into those later years in your school? Are you able to kind of bridge that for our audience if they're looking at older students and how to include those?
Absolutely, Nicole. I can, you know, and you know, it goes from kindergarten all the way up to grade 12. I mean, it doesn't stop anywhere in our system.
Mm-hmm.
And now what you're seeing right there is a picture of a grade that's intermediate. That's grade 5, 4, 5, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
You'll notice that the tables are not in rows.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's huge because they do a lot of group work is done. Yeah, notice also that there's room for mobility in there.
Mm-hmm.
There are visual schedules on the wall. Mm-hmm. There's evidence of those programs like WITS, and that is a grade 3. Yeah, 3, 2, 3, 4. That's one of the team teachers. These teachers are absolutely amazing. They do all kinds of inclusive things like where they, you know, they work on the Minds Up program. Just all of those programs that I've already talked about extend all the way up. That is a grade. Notice the carpet. That's a grade, I think, 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. So there's a meeting area there, right? Also notice that September, you know, it's a real place, right? Mm-hmm. Where all children are included. Oh, and actually, what's really cool is go back, please. Outside that classroom window is an outdoor space, so the classroom extends outside. So our buddy classes and that's new actually. We've got these great big, really cool rocks. They're huge, right? Mm-hmm. And the kids come and there's enough room on them for 2 kids to sit on them. So we can sit in group, and it's a circle. There's one semicircle and there's a circle. So the kids can sit in a circle and work together. And the circle's magic for inclusion because it's like, you know, you come alongside, you know, and yeah, it's just like, whoa, it's really cool. Yeah.
And then, sorry, and then this is even a higher grade, correct?
5, okay. 6. She's done grade 7
and
as well.
They're still in groups.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Oh, go back.
Sorry, going back. Pressing that.
Now this teacher is like amazing. Well, all of our teachers are fabulous. Amazing. Like I can't say enough about my colleagues. I work with an outstanding, knowledgeable staff, and we really work together as a team really well. It's fabulous. And notice the lights. That's the light, a picture of the lights on, Nicole. There you go. We do have it. This class last year had 5 designated children and 2 paraprofessionals working in tandem, and they work as a teaching team. It's like amazing. She does class meetings. She does a lot of work right now around how are we going to be together. So, you know, how are we going to make people feel comfortable? We do class contracts. So, for example, and the children are included in designing what the day will look like.
Right.
And they're included in how are we going to treat each other and what are our rules going to be, right? And then they sign off on it, and they're really good at building it, and then they'll correct each other like, no, buddy, that's not okay. And then if there's an issue, like a social thing comes up, you sit in a class meeting. This is kindergarten all the way up, all the way through. Mm-hmm. just sitting together and say, well, we have a problem. How are we going to solve it? So the teacher's modeling, okay, you know, are we going to just oust them? No. Are we going to pop them in the head? No, it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because we don't, because when kid Maslow's, you know, like we're going right back to our hierarchy of needs. If we don't feel safe, we're not going to learn. Our brain completely shuts down.
That's right.
Right. And we need our brain to be open. Right. And so those socials, like those feelings of safety and security in the classroom need to be present for all of our children right across the board.
That's right. I think this is a perfect.
And I love this quote. This is from the lady that's in the grade 5-6. She has, I think every week or something, she has a new quote.
I think this is perfect to wrap our webinar up on too. This is great.
The only true failure can come if you quit. Rosie Rivera.
Keep going. Keep including, keep trying, keep learning.
Keep learning. And you know, some days are going to be really hard. You know, like it's not always going to be an easy, right? It's not easy, right? And you know, it takes a long time to set up and develop, right?
Yeah.
And we need each other. You know, you can't do it by yourself. That's, you know, it doesn't happen alone. And it's an attitude. It's a way of looking at children and families as part of your class. You need to, that's it. You know.
Most definitely. Well, Gayle, I would just, before we wrap up, of course, send you copious amounts of gratitude for spending time with us during this past hour talking about your program and inclusive schools. And you are the epitome of inclusion. You always have been and always will be. The strategies, the photos, everything that you've given us today is most appreciated. I just want to show the audience where they can contact you, because you are open to communication. So people can look for you, kindergayle@shaw.ca, which is your email.
Yep.
Your website, one of them is Creating Inclusive School Communities.
Yep.
And the other one we'll post too, which was Growing Kindergarten.
Growing a Kindergarten.
Growing a Kindergarten. Okay.
Kindergarten. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, that one's more aimed at teachers than parents. That's more of the audience. The other one, that one is, although there are some ideas in there that parents may be interested in. I just want to give you that little heads up.
Great. And then, of course, you can find me at theinclusiveclass.com, and my email, Twitter, Facebook is all up here on this slide. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us, and have a great week. Goodbye. Thank you, Gayle.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Nicole.